Now pay attention to this as we decipher the complete philosophy of Euclid, the man who discovered the hidden language of reality. So pay deep attention to this, as it will transform your ways of thinking. Imagine for a moment that everything you see around you, the buildings towering above your city, the smartphone in your hand, the roads stretching across continents, the satellites orbiting Earth, and even the algorithms controlling modern artificial intelligence can all be traced back to a single book written more than 2,000 years ago. Not a book about power, not a book about religion, not a book about politics. A book about lines, points, angles, shapes. And yet this book changed civilization forever. Today, we are diving into the complete philosophy of Euclid, one of the most influential minds in human history. A man whose ideas quietly shaped the foundations of science, engineering, architecture, astronomy, philosophy, and even the way you think without realizing it. Most people know Euclid as the father of geometry, but very few understand that Euclid was far more than a mathematician. He was a philosopher of certainty, a philosopher of order, a philosopher who believed the universe could be understood through reason. And perhaps, most importantly, he was a philosopher who showed humanity that truth could be discovered step by step, through logic rather than opinion. By the end of this journey, you will understand not only Euclid's teachings, but why his philosophy remains one of the most powerful mental frameworks ever created. And I want to ask you a question before we begin. Do you believe truth exists independently of human opinion? Or is truth simply whatever society decides it is? Comment below. Truth is discovered, or truth is created. Let's see what the Stoic Gateway community thinks. Now let's begin. Long before modern science existed, long before universities, long before laboratories and computer simulations, humanity was searching for answers. Ancient civilizations looked toward the stars and wondered, why do planets move? Why do seasons change? Why do some structures stand for centuries while others collapse? Why does nature appear to follow patterns? Most people answered these questions through mythology. Everything was explained through stories. Then something extraordinary happened. A new group of thinkers emerged in Greece, and they began asking a dangerous question. What if reality follows laws? What if the universe operates according to principles that can be understood through reason? This was the intellectual environment into which Euclid stepped. Although surprisingly little is known about his personal life, historians generally place him around 300 BC in Alexandria, Egypt, one of the greatest centers of knowledge in the ancient world. Alexandria was unlike any city that had existed before. It housed the legendary Library of Alexandria. Scholars from every corner of the known world gathered there. Ideas collided. Knowledge expanded. And Euclid became one of its brightest minds. Yet Euclid's true genius was not inventing geometry. Geometry already existed. The Egyptians used geometric principles to construct pyramids. The Babylonians understood many geometric relationships. What Euclid did was something far more revolutionary. He organized knowledge. He created a system. He took scattered discoveries and transformed them into a logical structure that could not easily be challenged. This reveals the first great principle of Euclid's philosophy. Knowledge without structure is weakness. Most people collect information. Few people organize it. Most people accumulate facts. Few people create systems. Euclid understood that wisdom emerges when knowledge is arranged into a coherent structure. Think about your own life. How much information have you consumed? How many books have you read? How many videos have you watched? How many podcasts have you listened to? And yet, how much of that knowledge has actually transformed your life? The problem isn't information. The problem is organization. Euclid's genius was recognizing that truth becomes powerful when arranged systematically. This idea became the foundation of his masterpiece, a book known as Elements. If there is one book that changed civilization more than almost any other, it is Elements. For over 2,000 years, it was considered the standard textbook of mathematics. Only a handful of books in human history have influenced more minds. Inside Elements, Euclid introduced a revolutionary method. He began with simple assumptions, then built increasingly complex truths upon those foundations. This may sound obvious today, but at the time it was revolutionary. Instead of relying on authority, tradition, or personal opinion, Euclid relied on logical proof. And here we encounter his second great philosophical principle. Truth must be demonstrated, not merely asserted. This sounds simple, yet look at modern society. People constantly make claims. Politicians make claims. Influencers make claims. Experts make claims. News outlets make claims. But Euclid would ask a simple question. Can you prove it? Show me the logical chain. Show me the evidence. Show me how you arrived at that conclusion. This habit of demanding proof became one of the greatest gifts Euclid ever gave humanity. Because without proof, civilization becomes vulnerable to illusion. Without proof, emotion replaces reason. Without proof, power replaces truth. Euclid believed that genuine knowledge must withstand examination. And this leads us directly into perhaps his most famous teaching, the power of first principles. Every argument in Elements begins from foundational truths, simple starting points. A point, a line, a plane. Basic assumptions accepted as self-evident. Everything else emerges from these foundations. This approach later inspired countless thinkers, scientists, philosophers, engineers, inventors, even modern entrepreneurs. The idea is simple. If you want to understand anything deeply, break it down to its fundamental components. Instead of asking, what do people believe? Ask, what is actually true? Instead of asking, what has always been done? Ask, what are the underlying principles? This method is known today as first principles thinking, and Euclid was one of its greatest masters. Whenever you feel trapped in life, confused by complexity, overwhelmed by information, remember Euclid's lesson. Return to fundamentals. Strip away assumptions. Find the foundation, then rebuild from there. This alone can transform the way you solve problems. Now here is something fascinating. Many people think Euclid was simply obsessed with geometry. But geometry was never the ultimate goal. Geometry was merely a training ground for the mind. Euclid understood something profound. The way you think determines the quality of your life. Most people think emotionally. Euclid trained people to think logically. Most people jump to conclusions. Euclid trained people to proceed carefully. Most people want immediate answers. Euclid trained people to value process. In reality, Elements is not merely a geometry book. It is a manual for disciplined thinking. Every theorem teaches patience. Every proof teaches precision. Every argument teaches intellectual honesty. This is why generations of philosophers considered geometry a path toward wisdom, not because shapes themselves are magical, but because learning geometry trains the mind to seek clarity. And clarity is power. Take a moment and consider this. How many problems in your life result from unclear thinking? How many arguments? How many mistakes? How many regrets? Euclid would argue that clarity solves more problems than intelligence alone, because intelligence without clarity often creates confusion. Clarity transforms intelligence into wisdom. And that brings us to one of Euclid's deepest philosophical beliefs. The universe possesses order. This idea might seem obvious today, but in Euclid's era it was extraordinary. He believed reality was not chaotic. Reality was structured. Reality was governed by principles. Reality could be understood. This belief later became one of the foundations of science itself, because science depends upon a critical assumption. The universe follows discoverable laws. If reality were random, science would be impossible. If reality lacked order, knowledge would be impossible. Euclid's geometry revealed astonishing patterns hidden within existence, perfect symmetry, mathematical relationships, elegant structures. These discoveries suggested something remarkable. The universe is intelligible, and if the universe is intelligible, then human beings can understand it. Think about the optimism hidden inside this idea. Euclid believed the human mind is capable of discovering truth. Not all truth, not instantly, but progressively, step by step, proof by proof, discovery by discovery. This belief fueled centuries of intellectual progress. It encouraged humanity to explore, to investigate, to question, to learn, to grow. Without this mindset, modern civilization might never have emerged. Now I want you to pause and reflect. Do you believe reality is fundamentally ordered or fundamentally chaotic? Comment below. I'm curious to hear your perspective, because this question sits at the heart of Euclid's philosophy. And in part 2, we're going even deeper. We'll explore Euclid's revolutionary axioms, the hidden philosophy behind his famous postulates, his influence on Plato, Aristotle, Newton, Einstein, and modern science, the deeper spiritual meaning of geometry, and why Euclid's method may be the ultimate blueprint for mastering your own life. If you're enjoying this journey, subscribe to Stoic Gateway and join thousands seeking timeless wisdom from history's greatest minds. Now remember this: Euclid's greatest lesson was not about triangles. It was not about circles. It was not about angles. It was about something far more important. Truth exists. Reason can discover it. And the disciplined mind is humanity's most powerful tool. Part 2. The 5 postulates that changed human history. This is where Euclid's philosophy becomes truly extraordinary. Because Euclid was not simply teaching geometry. He was teaching humanity how certainty is built. Most people want certainty without effort. They want conclusions without investigation. They want answers without questioning. Euclid understood that certainty cannot be inherited. It must be earned. And that process begins with foundations. This is why Euclid started his masterpiece, Elements, with definitions, common notions, and postulates. What modern thinkers would call axioms. Fundamental truths accepted as starting points. The first postulate stated that a straight line can be drawn from any point to any other point. Simple. The second stated that a finite straight line can be extended indefinitely. Again, simple. The third declared that a circle can be drawn with any center and radius. The fourth established that all right angles are equal. And then came the fifth, the famous parallel postulate. A statement so strange, so controversial, and so profound that it would challenge mathematicians for over 2,000 years. Most people hear these postulates and think they sound insignificant, but they reveal one of Euclid's deepest philosophical insights. Every system depends upon assumptions. Every belief system, every ideology, every religion, every political philosophy, every scientific model. Everything begins with assumptions. The difference is that Euclid openly declared his assumptions. He placed them at the beginning. He invited examination. He welcomed scrutiny. He showed his foundation before constructing his argument. How many people do this today? How many people honestly reveal the assumptions underlying their beliefs? Very few. Most people defend conclusions. Euclid examined foundations. This is one reason his philosophy remains so powerful. He understood that if the foundation is weak, the entire structure eventually collapses. Imagine building a skyscraper on unstable ground. No matter how beautiful the building appears, disaster is inevitable. The same is true for your life. The same is true for your beliefs. The same is true for your goals. Many people attempt to create extraordinary lives using flawed foundations. They seek confidence without self-respect, wealth without discipline, success without responsibility, peace without self-control. Euclid would say the problem is not the structure, the problem is the foundation. And this leads us to one of the greatest life lessons hidden within Euclid's philosophy. Your future is determined by your first principles. Your assumptions shape your destiny. If you assume failure is inevitable, your behavior will reflect that belief. If you assume growth is possible, your actions will change. If you assume discipline matters, your habits transform. If you assume excuses are acceptable, your potential diminishes. The foundation always determines the outcome. Now let's explore the mysterious fifth postulate. For centuries, mathematicians believed something was wrong with it. It seemed different from the others, more complicated, less obvious. Many tried to prove it using the other four postulates. Every attempt failed. Generation after generation, century after century. The greatest minds in mathematics struggled with this puzzle. Then, something remarkable happened. A revolutionary realization emerged. Perhaps the fifth postulate wasn't wrong. Perhaps it was simply optional. Perhaps different assumptions could create entirely different geometries. This discovery eventually gave birth to non-Euclidean geometry, a breakthrough that would later help make Einstein's theory of relativity possible. Think about how extraordinary this is. Euclid's work was so profound that even attempts to challenge it ended up transforming science. The lesson here is powerful. True wisdom is not afraid of criticism. Weak ideas fear examination. Strong ideas welcome it. Euclid's philosophy survived because it was built upon rigorous reasoning. Even when new discoveries emerged, they did not destroy Euclid. They expanded human understanding. This is how intellectual progress occurs. Not through blind agreement, not through emotional arguments, but through disciplined inquiry. And this brings us to another essential principle in Euclid's philosophy: humility before truth. Modern culture often rewards certainty. People rush to declare themselves experts. They speak with confidence about subjects they barely understand. Euclid represents the opposite mindset. His method demands patience, precision, careful reasoning, intellectual humility. Every theorem required proof. Every conclusion required justification. Every claim required demonstration. Imagine how much stronger society would become if people adopted this habit. Imagine how many conflicts could be avoided. Imagine how much misinformation would disappear. Euclid teaches us that wisdom begins when ego steps aside. The pursuit of truth requires humility, and perhaps that is why so few people pursue it seriously. Because truth does not care about your feelings. Truth does not care about your status. Truth does not care about your popularity. Truth simply is. This idea connects deeply with another great philosophical tradition: the teachings of Plato, the teachings of Aristotle, and later, the teachings of the Stoics. Like Euclid, these thinkers believed reality possesses an objective structure. The human task is not to invent reality. The human task is to understand it. This perspective stands in sharp contrast to modern relativism. Today, many people believe truth changes according to perspective. Euclid disagreed. For him, truth existed independently of opinion. A triangle remained a triangle, whether people believed in it or not. A proof remained valid, regardless of popularity. Reality was not determined by consensus. Reality was determined by structure. And this idea remains revolutionary because modern society constantly pressures individuals to conform, to follow trends, to adopt fashionable beliefs, to seek validation. Euclid's philosophy points in another direction, toward reality itself, toward independent thinking, toward objective investigation, toward intellectual courage. Now let's discuss something few people realize. Euclid's influence extended far beyond mathematics. His method transformed philosophy itself. For centuries, philosophers attempted to imitate Euclid's logical approach. One of the most famous examples was the philosopher Baruch Spinoza. Spinoza admired Euclid so deeply that he structured his masterpiece, Ethics, using geometric proofs, definitions, axioms, theorems, logical demonstrations. He wanted philosophy to achieve the same certainty Euclid achieved in geometry. Whether he succeeded remains debated, but the influence is undeniable. Euclid became the model for rational thinking, the gold standard of logical inquiry, and his influence spread even further. Scientists adopted his methods. Engineers adopted his methods. Architects adopted his methods. Economists adopted his methods. Modern education adopted his methods. The very concept of proving something systematically owes an enormous debt to Euclid. In many ways, civilization itself became Euclidean. Now pause for a moment. Consider your own life. How often do you demand proof from yourself? How often do you examine your assumptions? How often do you test your beliefs? Most people challenge others. Few challenge themselves. Euclid would encourage radical self-examination, not self-criticism, not self-hatred, but intellectual honesty. The willingness to ask, how do I know this is true? That single question can transform a person's life, because many limitations are built upon unexamined assumptions, many fears, many insecurities, many self-imposed barriers, many inherited beliefs. The moment you begin questioning them, their power starts to weaken, and this is why Euclid remains relevant more than 2,000 years later. He provides a method for escaping illusion, a method for discovering clarity, a method for training the mind. Not through motivation, not through inspiration, but through disciplined reasoning. Now I want to ask you something. What assumption has most shaped your life? Comment below. You might discover something powerful simply by writing it down. Because awareness is the first step toward a transformation. As we come to the end of this journey into the mind of Euclid, remember this. More than 2,000 years ago, a man sat down and asked a question that would change human history. How do we know something is true? That question built civilizations. That question built science. That question built the modern world. But tonight, I want to leave you with a different question. What truths are you ignoring in your own life? What assumptions have you accepted without examination? Euclid taught us that every great structure begins with a single point. Every great proof begins with a single principle. And every great life begins with a single decision. The decision to seek truth, not comfort, not excuses, not validation. Truth. Because the moment you commit yourself to truth, your transformation begins. Hit the like button and subscribe to Stoic Gateway for more deep explorations into the greatest minds that ever lived. And if you're serious about transforming your mind, strengthening your discipline, and building unshakable clarity in your life, I've created a free transformational guide for members of our community. Simply email transformation to the Stoic Path 33 at gmail.com, and I'll send it directly to you. Until next time, remember, the world is full of opinions, but very few people dedicate themselves to truth. Be one of them. Keep learning. Keep growing. Keep questioning. And above all, never stop building your life upon foundations that cannot be shaken. This is Stoic Gateway, and I'll see you in the next journey through the minds of history's greatest thinkers.